Welcome. This is Megan Malberg with DRC. I will be going over the DRC Insight Technology training for the Wisconsin Forward exam. This is video 1, key dates, key changes, and DRC Insight system and network requirements. The technology training is split out into 4 separate videos. This is video 1, which will cover key dates, key changes, and system and network requirements. The second video is intended for new technology coordinators. It's a brief overview of the DRC Insight systems. The third video covers central office services, including an overview and installation and management. The last video covers testing device preparation and technology support and troubleshooting resources. If you're new to the technology coordinator role, you should watch all 4 of these videos. If you're an experienced technology coordinator, at a minimum, I would recommend that you watch this first video and then the 4th video about testing device preparation. The third one could also be good if you want a recap about managing the central office services configurations. These videos are posted to YouTube, and PDF copies of the slides are available on the DPI Technology Resources webpage linked on this slide. Before we start, I'll point out where you can find all of the DRC technology readiness resources in case you want to find them to reference during this presentation. The first location they are available is on DPI's Technology Resources and Requirements webpage, and they are organized very well there. The same documents are also available on the DRC Insight portal under General Information under the Documents tab, and you can filter the audience by technology coordinator in order to see the technology resources. Across all slides in this training, whenever resources are mentioned, these are the 2 places that you can find them. First, let's start with a few key dates. The Technology User Guide, along with our other technology readiness resources, were available on November 10th, so those documents are out there on the DRC Insight portal as well as on DPI's website. There will be one Q&A webinar held on February 4th for DACs, SACs, and DTCs to have an opportunity to ask any questions you may have. The test setup window opens on February 9th. At that time, students will be loaded into the DRC Insight portal, and assessment staff will have access to manage registrations, accessibility features, and test tickets. And lastly, the Wisconsin Forward exam test window runs from March 16th to April 24th. To see a full list of key dates, you can check out the Forward exam calendar webpage on DPI's website linked at the bottom of this slide. Now let's get into the key changes and updates. The main changes you should be aware of are all reflected on a PDF document called DRC Insight Changes for 2025-26. It's a 4-page document, so after this training, if you want a recap, that would be a good resource for you to refer to. But we're going to talk about everything that's on that document right now, and then we'll get into standard annual updates and system and network requirements as well. There is a new DRC Knowledge Hub webpage that contains all of the same information as system requirements. It reflects regular updates of supported operating system versions. When you go to this webpage, the information is on a few different pages, so you can click on the plus sign at the top of the page to open the drop-down menu and navigate to other sections of the system requirements. So this main page of the Knowledge Hub is the supported operating system versions, but you can also navigate to the testing device setup, hardware requirements, and DRC's operating system and device support policy. This new Knowledge Hub will replace the System Requirements PDF eventually, probably next administration year. The System Requirements PDFs are still available this year. In the DRC Insight portal, where you go to download the installers, which is under General Information under the Downloads tab, there is the View System Requirements button at the bottom, and that used to open the System Requirements PDF, but it now links to the Knowledge Hub. As many of you may already know, there is a new Chromebook update for this year. Google is ending support for the type of kiosk application that DRC currently uses to create the DRC Insight Secure app for Chromebooks. In response, DRC developed a new Chromebook PWA or Progressive Web app. The installation and setup procedures for this is a little different than in the past, but this is required to meet Google's new application version support and security guidelines. So what this means for you is for the 2025-26 year, the DRC Insight Chromebook application will be released as a PWA or Progressive Web app version with extension. This will require Chromebook districts to uninstall the current application and install the new PWA version of Insight. And that needs to be installed in order for students to be able to access the tutorials, practice test, and the forward exam from the DRC Insight Secure application. The PWA Chromebook update can be completed in a quick 6-step process. So first you want to uninstall version 15, then add the PWA in the Google Admin Console through Devices, then Chrome, then Apps and Extensions. Then you will configure the PWA by updating the values. You can then add the extension by using the custom URL. You'll configure the extension by adding your custom COS org unit ID and then save the changes. A full description of these steps, including that custom URL, is available in both the Technology User Guide as well as a technical bulletin regarding the PWA app. And our DRC Help Desk customer service team is always happy to help if you run into any issues along the way. Also note that if your district has already completed this installation of the PWA app for WIDA Access, you will not need to repeat the steps for Wisconsin Forward. The same DRC Insight app is used for testing for both WIDA Access and Wisconsin Forward, so it's really a one-time process. If you already did it, there's nothing else you need to do. When working with the Chromebook PWA updates in Central Office Services, it's always important to remember that extra instances of the same device in your Testing Devices tab will not negatively impact the software performance. But going through your Testing Device tab now and starting to remove any Chromebooks that are on version 15 or that have not been used in the past 6 months will make your Testing Device tab more manageable. We only recommend that this type of device removal would be done by local IT, but not to worry if a device is removed from the Testing Device tab by accident and a student is attempting to use one of these devices for testing. They'll receive a configuration not found message when the app is launched, and then either the student or test administrator could enter the org unit ID, and then the student would be forwarded to the testing page and be able to move on as prompted. The next change is that the DRC Insight installer for Windows will now allow auto updates as it had in the past. So for the past couple of years, users needed admin rights to update to the new software version for Windows devices, but now when the DRC Insight application is launched on Windows machines, users will receive a prompt if they would like to update the device version without needing admin rights. Users can then select the upgrade button, and once the process completes, the standard menu for the test engine will appear. So if your district is using Windows devices and you want to enable that users would be able to see this upgrade button and be able to update the software version themselves without needing admin rights, then go out to your Central Office Services configuration in the DRC Insight portal and navigate to the Configuration Information tab. And you'll see a toggle that says Enable Auto Updates for Testing Devices, and then you'll want to toggle that to on, and then, of course, then click Update Configuration to save the change. The next key change is regarding COS service devices that are running Mac OS 15. An Apple update requires sites using COS-SDs currently on Mac OS 15 to reinstall the COS-SD software in order to update the application identification information required by Apple. Version 9 of the COS-SD software fixes this issue and is available to download from the DRC Insight portal. If you don't reinstall the COS-SD software on devices running Mac OS 15, the service device maintenance tool will no longer function and the COS-SD will not automatically update. If you are on Mac OS 14 or below, your COS-SD will continue to work normally unless you updated to Mac OS 15 before installing version 9 of the COS-SD software. For more information about this, please refer to the Technology User Guide Volume 2. New for this year, DRC Insight for Windows will now have a Microsoft Teams detection at the start of testing. So for Windows devices only, if Microsoft Teams is running in the background and is not fully closed before the DRC Insight application is launched, an error message will appear. To prevent this, Teams must be fully closed before launching the application. Clicking the X in the top right-hand corner of the screen will not completely close Microsoft Teams. It must be fully closed either by right-clicking the application and selecting Quit Teams or by using the Task Manager. DRC has changed the DRC Insight Secure Browser desktop icon to make it more accessible for students and teachers. When a device is updated to version 16 of DRC Insight, the new desktop icon shortcut will appear. The title of the app is also shortened. It used to say DRC Insight Online Assessments, and now it just says DRC Insight. Please make sure this is communicated with test administrators and students so they know how to identify the new logo. We've also made changes to the DRC Insight app landing page, also to improve accessibility for students. The system readiness check has also been moved. It used to be accessed via a faint check mark in the bottom left-hand corner, but now it has been moved to the top right corner and it's a visible button. And the access code remains the same, which is still 7745. There are also a few changes related to the DRC Insight portal, the administrative portal. When you log into the DRC Insight portal, you'll see the landing page looks a little bit different. There are some new shortcut tiles available that you can use to navigate to some of the key areas of the portal. They do take you to the same location as the My Applications drop-down, so you can use either option, but using these shortcut tiles on the landing page will save you one click and it will get you to the same place. There are some changes to the DRC Insight Portal interface applications that district and school assessment coordinators use. New terminology includes that students are now called participants and tests are now called registrations. You may notice those terminology changes reflected in the technology user guide. Another change this year that assessment staff needs to be aware of is that student data will now come through an EdFi API, and students and their associated tests will automatically update overnight in the DRC Insight portal based on what is pulled from the local SIS system. So any changes to student information needs to be made in the local SIS system, and then it will feed into the DRC Insight portal automatically via the EdFi API. This also means that student transfers will now happen automatically. And this change applies to public and choice school students only. Private school students will still be entered and managed manually in the portal. This is the last slide for key changes. This is a list of the usual yearly updates that require action from you. New URLs have been added to the network allow list. All new URLs will be bolded in the Technology User Guide Volume 1 on page 20. There are always annual updates to supported operating system versions, which we'll discuss more shortly. And then there's also the DRC software updates. The DRC Insight Secure application installed on student testing devices has been updated to version 16, and the COS service device software installed on service devices has been updated to version 9. One thing to note that does not change year over year is your COS configuration and your COS org unit ID. You can continue to use your same COS configuration and org unit ID as before, or you're welcome to create a new one if you prefer that as well. Now we'll discuss system requirements and operating system version updates. To view the system requirements, you can either view the PDF document or refer to the DRC Knowledge Hub, and there are a couple different methods for getting to both of those options that we've already discussed, but the links are here on this slide. There are a few small things that have been incorporated into system requirements. First is that assistive technology has been added to the list of background software and processes that should be reviewed and disabled and turned off before testing. So if assistive technologies are not being used for testing, they should be disabled. For example, Chromevox on Chromebooks, which is a built-in screen reader, that should be disabled since text-to-speech is embedded into the test in DRC Insight. And if it's not disabled, then students might hear two TTS voices during testing. So make sure that's disabled. Some information about vendor end of life has been added throughout system requirements. Just as a reference point of when a device reaches the vendor end of life, DRC will provide best effort support for a short time before ending support. Also, when Chrome devices meet their AUE date and become unmanaged, DRC will no longer provide best effort support. DRC does not offer support for unmanaged Chrome OS devices. Our system requirements document is updated 3 times per year. This screenshot is of the system requirements PDF, but again, the same information is available on the new Knowledge Hub webpage. The new system requirements for the year were released at the end of June, and we had an updated version released at the end of October. And then we'll have one more, which will be released at the end of February. So please be sure to check back and review the next version of system requirements in February prior to testing. This is a list of our operating system version support. The latest information for supported operating systems can be found in the DRC Knowledge Hub. So starting with Chrome OS, there's full support for the current stable channel version. The minimum version required is Chrome level 130, except for version 131 is not supported. For Windows, Windows 1123H2 and 1124H2 are fully supported, as well as the Windows Server 2016, 2019, and 2022. There's incoming best effort support for Windows 11 in SE mode and Windows 1125H2 and Windows Server 2025. Windows 1022H2 and 1122H2 and Windows 10 in S mode are all in outgoing best effort support. The vendor end of life for those was October 2025, and those will be moved to DRC end of support in July 2026. For iPads, iPadOS version 17, 18, and 26 are fully supported, and version 16 is in outgoing best effort support. For Macs, macOS 14, 15, and 26 are fully supported, and Mac version 13 is in outgoing best effort support. For both of those, the iPad and Mac versions that I mentioned are in outgoing best effort support. The vendor end of life for those was fall 2025, and those will be moved to DRC end of support in July 2026, but they could still be used for testing this year. For Linux, Ubuntu 20.04, 22.04, and 24.04, the LTS versions with GNOME Shell are all fully supported. Supported service device platforms include Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. For testing devices, supported platforms include Windows, Mac OS, Linux, as well as iPad OS and Chrome OS. Please note the device types that are supported on each platform. Any testing device operating system type can connect to any service device operating system type. The two platforms do not need to match, so you can have a mix of different service device platform types and testing device platform types. These are the different phases of DRC's operating system support. First, we have a pre-release where DRC works with operating system vendors to test our software in each vendor's beta channel as they develop enhancements to the operating systems and before they are released to the public. Usually this is 2 to 4 weeks before the operating system is released. Next, we have Phase 1, which is our best effort support for vendor recently released versions. Additional rounds of regression testing verifies actual production releases, and we troubleshoot any issues to resolution. Phase 2 is fully supported. Operating systems are tested and certified with full support if any issues are uncovered. Phase 3 is our best effort support for vendor recently unsupported versions. DRC will assist in troubleshooting issues as best as we can without a guaranteed resolution, but we do encourage you to update your operating systems to a current version for support and security reasons. Next is Phase 4. This is end of support. DRC cannot offer any level of support for our software on this version, and it's blocked from running DRC software applications. The vendor end-of-life phase is when an operating system is not yet blocked from running DRC software applications, but is not supported by the vendor. The date listed in this phase is when a vendor stops supporting that operating system. However, DRC will allow use of this operating system and offer best effort support until the next major release of the DRC Insight Secure application. The DRC device support policy offers full support of DRC software on vendor-supported devices that meet DRC's device and supported operating system requirements. Once a vendor ends support for a device, DRC provides best effort support for a short period before ending support. End of support means the device will fail the system readiness check and will be blocked from running DRC software. Apple bases the iPad model support on whether the model has a supported operating system, and Google bases Chrome OS device support on its auto update expiration or AUE date. The Chrome OS AUE date is based on the model's first production date, not its purchase date. That's typically 10 years after the production release for most of their devices. You can access the link on this slide to determine the AUE date for your device. When the AUE date is reached, Google considers the device obsolete. Software updates from Google are no longer guaranteed. The device may not receive necessary security and functionality upgrades, and Google suspends the ability to manage it using the Google Management Console. DRC does not offer support for unmanaged Chrome OS devices, so if the DRC Insight Secure app for Chrome OS was manually installed, even if they otherwise meet DRC's system requirements and the operating system requirements. Chrome OS devices that have reached or will reach their AUE date within the school year should be replaced. The iPad operating system release strategy provides both major and minor release versions. DRC offers full support for the most recent major release version of iPad operating system within 90 days of public availability of the new version. During the 90 days of testing verification, DRC provides best effort support for the latest major release version. We offer best effort support for minor release versions of iPad as soon as they are made available to the public. DRC will attempt to fully support minor release versions within 30 days of their release. The next 3 slides here are a recap of some of the things we've already covered, just shown in a table format for reference. This slide shows the 2 different DRC software installables, the Central Office Services software installed on service devices, and the DRC Insight Secure application installed on testing devices. It shows their supported operating systems, where to download the installers, and this year's current version number. You can find installers in the DRC Insight portal under the Downloads tab under General Information. iPad installers are only available in the App Store, and they can be downloaded and deployed using your mobile device manager or your MDM solution. Chrome OS installers are available as a URL link, and those can be deployed in the Google Admin Console. The Windows and S Mode installers are only accessible in the Microsoft Store directly to one device at a time. This is information about software and content updates for the COS software on service devices. The software will auto-update to version 9, and you can also manually update it from the COS dashboard in the DRC Insight portal or by using the maintenance tool. Content updates are also automatic and happen overnight if the service device is left on and with an internet connection, which is highly recommended. For the DRC Insight Secure application on testing devices, the current version for the year is version 16. For instructions on updating to version 16, refer to the Technology User Guide Volume 3. For Chromebooks, as we discussed, the new PWA app must be installed, and for Windows and Linux, the Enable Auto Update setting can be toggled on in your COS configuration. Mac devices still require manual updates. Now we'll discuss system requirements for COS service devices, or COS-SDs, and talk about bandwidth for them. There were increased requirements last year in spring 2024 as a result of the TTS being embedded on all forms as a universal support. There are no changes from last year, so if your COS-SD setup worked well last year and you'll be testing the same number of students concurrently, you shouldn't need to make any changes. However, it's still a good idea to review the requirements and resources to confirm sufficient bandwidth. On this slide, on the left side is the minimum hardware requirements for COS-SDs. There are no changes from last year, but last year some of these values were new or updated. So new last year, the memory was increased to minimum of 8 gigabytes RAM. Prior to that, it was a minimum of 4 gigabytes of RAM. 100 gigabytes of disk space is needed for installation, and it's recommended to keep 10% of the device's total hard drive as free space for optimal performance. It should also be connected to the network through a wired connection. It's also important to keep in mind that the minimum hardware requirements here are for 100 concurrent testers or less, and then you can scale up CPU from there if you have more than 100 concurrent testers. A handy reference for scaling up is a table that's available in the system requirements, and that's what's shown here on the right side. I know this is probably too small to read, but we'll look at it larger on the next slide. This is what the table looks like in the system requirements PDF. For all Wisconsin forward testing, you will need to refer to the second table, which is for network intensive content, and that applies to all Wisconsin forward testing because of text-to-speech on all forms. So here is that same table for network intensive content. This is what it looks like in the DRC Knowledge Hub. This shows recommendations for your COS-SD based on the number of concurrent testers. As you can see, we have 4 CPU will support up to 100 concurrent testers, 8 CPU will support up to 200 concurrent testers, and 16 CPU will support up to 500 concurrent testers. The capacity is always limited by the lowest value in this table. For example, let's say you have a service device with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a minimum available shared network bandwidth of 400 megabits per second, but you still only have 4 CPU cores, then you're still limited to no more than 100 concurrent testers. Also, if you're using multiple COS service devices in a single configuration, it's best to keep those devices closely aligned in specs for optimal load balancing performance. The system does automatic round-robin load balancing and assigns tests evenly regardless of the service device specs. So if you have a low-performing COS-SD matched with a high-performing COS-SD, The lowest performing one will dictate and limit your capacity. So please make sure that the specs across your pool of COS-SDs is the same or very similar. Otherwise, just know that your capacity is limited to the lowest performing service device since tests are assigned to them evenly. Most districts at this point have scaled up, and again, if everything worked well for you last year, then you should be fine for this year. But last year, there were some districts that did have bandwidth issues during peak testing, and we found most of the time they were exceeding the numbers in this table. So when using this table, try to stick to it closely. For example, if you have 220 testers or even 201 testers, you should not assume that this line that says up to 200 is going to be sufficient. You really need to scale up your specs if your district is going to be exceeding this number at all, so move up accordingly. Also, there are other things that can potentially impact your bandwidth just depending on other use of the network during testing, or if other things are consuming CPU on your service device, then you may find that you start to have bandwidth issues when you have a number of concurrent testers that's even a little under that number. So just again, depending on other factors, that's a big reason why we recommend using a dedicated service device for testing. Some additional recommendations when managing your central office services service device are that the COS-SD should be connected to the network through a wired connection, and you should have a dedicated service device that's used only for testing, not for other process-intensive applications. Service devices can be set up at the district or school level, but generally school level is recommended because the closer the content is hosted to the student, the better. Concurrent testing and condensed start times increase the load and overhead on your COS service device. If there are bandwidth concerns, consider staggering student logins. Staggering should be based on when the Begin the Test button is selected, and that is when substantial file transferring begins. Smaller staggered groups within a classroom can be offset by selecting Begin the Test approximately 15 to 30 seconds apart, and if possible, it can also be helpful to stagger testing between different classrooms if they are testing at the same time to help manage the load on your service device so it's not overworked with all students starting at once. This slide has a list of all the resources and tools that can help tech coordinators with evaluating the COS-SD capacity. Again, there aren't any changes to these documents, but I'm highlighting them here because it's still important to review and double check to confirm sufficient capacity. Aside from the system requirements and the table that we discussed, there's also a tech bulletin that goes over all the recommendations. That's called Maximizing COS-SD Performance for Wisconsin Forward Testing. There's also the Site Capacity Estimator tool that's helpful. When it comes to tools to confirm your bandwidth, it's also important to remember that the system readiness check performed on student testing devices doesn't confirm sufficient bandwidth because it doesn't know how many concurrent testers there will be. So just because you have all green check marks in the system readiness check, that's great, and that's what you want to see, but remember that you do still have to do your own due diligence with minimum bandwidth to support the number of concurrent testers, and that's something that the readiness check can't confirm on its own. Lastly, let's talk about network setup and recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, every year there are new URLs that are added to the Allow list, and this list can be found in the Technology User Guide, Volume 1 on page 20. The bold URLs were recently added, so you'll want to ensure those URLs are allowed on all of your content filters, firewalls, and antivirus software. A couple other notes, DRC recommends allowing DRC Insight traffic to bypass your firewalls and proxies if possible. Besides allow listing these sites, you may need to enable them to pass through the proxy server without requiring authentication credentials to be passed by DRC Insight. Please review the Network Evaluation and Troubleshooting Support document. It contains detailed recommendations, including a section specifically covering recommendations for Chrome OS devices. It also has a checklist to help you evaluate your network configuration and its capacity for administering tests, including completing a wireless site survey to assess wireless coverage, reviewing network capacity and access points, running a speed test, and more. To ensure successful testing with DRC Insight, verify sufficient network bandwidth considering all simultaneous traffic. Use traffic shaping to give DRC Insight testing traffic priority over other network traffic if possible. During testing, other use of the network should be limited, especially any high bandwidth activities such as downloading and watching videos. Ensure adequate access point coverage for the number of students testing and reduce bandwidth usage in adjacent areas. Be mindful of wireless interference from other devices and require anyone using access points for testing to turn off non-essential wireless devices. These recommendations will help maintain a stable and efficient testing environment. This slide is a few more notes related to service devices. Some access points interpret testing traffic between the COS service device and the DRC Insight testing device as peer-to-peer networking. Review Layer 7 filtering to ensure that testing traffic is not blocked. If you have Layer 7 or peer-to-peer web filtering rules in your filters and access points, DRC recommends that you disable them during testing. Also, some content filters have advanced settings to allow for additional checks. If your content filter has reverse lookup or evasive protocols, DRC recommends that those be disabled as part of the filtering process. If the system readiness check fails with an error regarding no connection to the service device, but the service devices are in a functional status in the Central Office Services dashboard, it could be an issue with the firewall. Please call the DRC help desk to troubleshoot, and they can walk you through steps to create an inbound rule on your Windows firewall settings to permit COS applications and apply a firewall rule to allow COS port ranges. That's something that seems to come up a handful of times every year for different districts, so call the help desk and they can help you walk through that. That's all for the first video, which was key dates, key changes, and system and network requirements. The next video is video 2, DRC Insight Systems Overview. It's a brief overview with basic information that's intended for newer DTCs. If you're an experienced tech coordinator, you can skip to video 3, which is Central Office Services, or to video 4, which is the testing device preparation and troubleshooting. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the DRC Wisconsin Forward Help Desk. The contact information is provided on this slide. Thank you.